All right, so bell ringer's up. Describe what the global perspective is. Give an example of a global perspective. So that was kind of your assignment from yesterday. It was to just think of an example that you can apply to the global perspective. All right, so I'll give you some time to work on that. We'll review it. We'll go over it. We'll move on. Raven, current event for Friday. Okay. I'm going to have an assignment here for you. Just remind me to let you know about it towards the end of class, okay? Got it? So I don't forget. If there was not. No, there's not. Bless you. All right, so what do we got here? Describe the global perspective. What does it mean? What do we have? That here?
The global perspective refers to the capacity to see the whole picture, whether focusing on the whole part or not.
All right, good job. Good job. So you're focusing on a whole picture. And what did you use as an example?
I
Okay. All right. Good job. There are a lot of similarities, right? Especially with cell phones, social media, especially, and how we utilize technology to stay a little bit more interconnected. All right. Good. Hadley, what do you use as an example for the global perspective? Standard living. Okay. So how did you explain that within your bell ringer? All right, good job. So you're using our standard of living, while focusing on ours and comparing it to other places around the world. And I know I talked about that yesterday in class and how we can reflect on our standard of living and realize, you know what, we don't have it too bad. Many of us have our own car, right? Household has a car, and we have the ability to really stock our shelves with food. And not many places around the world can do that. Sources of entertainment is prevalent. Okay. And again, when you're focusing and looking at maybe another culture, another country around the world, they don't have the same resources like we do. And maybe sometimes we take that for granted. And that was just a good example I gave yesterday. So, Hadley, good job bringing that up. Allison, what example do you use?
I said studying the implications of the economic policies.
Okay. All right. Good job. So, drug use, you can maybe talk about that. Good. Good. Do you do any research on that? Not really. Just wanted to present it, talk about it. Okay. Good. Good. And there's many different things you can reference from that. Yeah. Good. So you can talk about drug use and maybe look at the United States, see where maybe a lot of the usage or maybe where this is being cracked down upon across the United States, maybe in these urban areas, maybe closer towards the border. Who knows? Kaya?
I said social media because everywhere around the world, like what they post and what they show on social media is different.
Okay. All right. So what examples do you have for that?
Like different trends and styles.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Good example. Good example. So you mean like different types of, I don't know, what was it? Gangnam style? Oh, was that a big thing back in the day? You guys even remember that? Is that old?
Yeah.
Too old?
That's like us in fifth grade. Yeah.
Actually, I just popped up on my social media. Well, was it 10 years ago today? I think that's like 10 years ago. I can't believe it. Yeah. And the Harlem Shake. You guys remember the Harlem Shake?
Stop.
No? Too much? What? Come on. I think it's kind of cool to think back to it. I talk about Vine a lot. Vine's just here and left right away. I guess TikTok's kind of taking its place now. All right, good. Social media. That's a good example. Let's see here. Let's see. Brittany, go ahead. How they handle it. Okay, so maybe policies that were created to talk about or try to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and present it. Okay, good. You guys hear the current news with Djokovic, famous tennis star. He's trying to go to the Australian Open, and they're permitting it. Well, they're prohibiting him from entering the country just because he's not vaccinated. And this is causing a lot of issues, especially at the international level of tennis. It's like, well, he's pretty much the top player in the world, and I think he won the Australian Open a couple times already, and prohibiting him from entering the country obviously is going to affect the tournament and the viewership of the tournament. So causing a lot of problems with that. All right, good. All right, let's talk about one more here. One more. Noah, what example do you give?
I said that.
Oh, you said technology. Okay. Anybody have anything different that we talked about? Haley Weiss?
I also put
COVID. Okay. All right. So let's move on here then. Let's move on here. Global perspective. This is a way to try to analyze, compare, contrast trends, okay, norms, values for, let's say, ours to other places around the world. And we'll talk about this more when we get to cultural relativism and ethnocentrism, how it might be accepted in other cultures around the world, and maybe how it's viewed as taboo. And maybe we just can't see our society maybe accepting these types of norms or values. So we'll get to that here sooner or later. Today, I want to focus a little bit on the vocab and move on to the origins of sociology and get into Emil Durkheim and kind of his belief of sociology and his perspective of it, and really creating it as a social science. So here are your terms for today. We got social patterns. Emil Durkheim himself. Knowing and social integration. There you go. All right, so what do we got? Social patterns. What are social patterns? What do we have? Caitlin, what do you got? Social patterns. Okay, all right, good, good. And do you have an example of a social pattern that you found one? No? What's an example of a social pattern you think? What's an example of a social pattern? What do we think? What do we think? Henninger, go
I would
ahead.
say like trends. I just people like-
Yeah, good job. Trends, good job. Good job. So what would you consider a trend then, as an example?
Trends of plastic.
All right, yeah, yeah, good job. So music, definitely, entertainment, dances, clothing, right? There's a lot of trends that come back in clothing. I guess jorts are coming back, huh?
No.
No, oh no, darn, darn. Mr. Rupp, do you hear about jorts coming back?
Jorts, no,
All right, maybe it's just me then.
just you. thing is just you.
Yeah, look at that. I'm recording.
Take it off. No, I don't think that would be a wise fashion.
All right.
I think.
I get it. I get it. Who, Mr. Rupp? Good. I think. All right, good job. So social patterns or trends, that's a good example that might, let's say, reappear, people dive into, get involved in. And this is really shaping, let's say, culture. And with social media, okay, this is really interconnecting the world, okay, an alarming state. It's to a point where it's like, well, are we going to have unique trends? Are we going to have unique values or norms anymore, like where it's different? Or because of social media and technology that everybody's kind of connected really instantaneously, is this just all going to disappear? It's kind of scary to think about it, right? Especially with foods, language, like you said, trends, values, norms. It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around. Really, just how social media and technology is just changing our world. All right, Emil Durkheim, what do you have? Emil Durkheim. Who is he? Who was he? Raven, what do you have for Emil Durkheim?
Social scientist who developed vigorous methodology.
All right, good job. So he's really famous for applying sociology as a studied social science and applying the scientific method to sociology. And he did this by analyzing suicide rates. Sad stuff, sad stuff. But there's more things, obviously, that he applied to the field of sociology. But he's looking at differences in really society as a whole and applying sociology as a field of study and realizing that it's not like psychology where maybe there's stimulus that affects us or just interactions, observable behaviors. This is more just how society shapes who we are. Okay, and we'll get involved a little bit more probably next week about his thoughts and his perspectives of Soch. But for the most part, he believes that there's a total change in society that occurs right around the late 1800s, moving into the 1900s. Obviously, he lived during that time. He experienced it. And what do you think that event was that totally changed how society acts and how society is viewed? So you might have to think back to history class. Kyle, go ahead. Okay, technology, good job. The what? Industrial Revolution, good job. The Industrial Revolution. Good work, good work. The Industrial Revolution. Good. So innovations that changed the world. Okay. And how the United States obviously is experiencing this time period right around the same time as these Western European countries. Yeah, there are two waves of the Industrial Revolution. One occurring 1700s, moving to 1800s in Great Britain, and then one happening a little bit later in Germany. Okay. And obviously including different things like really coal powered, steam powered engines, and then eventually gas powered, electricity, chemicals. So yeah, there's different changes and waves that occurred with the Industrial Revolution, but this is overall how it changed society worldwide, how we're trading with other countries through this capitalist effort. Okay, capitalist form of economy. All right, Naomi, what do we got here? Allison? Yeah, okay, good job. So through this change in society, Emil Durkheim, he really talks about this perspective and how society is changing, right? And it really was at this time. Okay, yeah, we're shifting from an agrarian style economy to industrial with innovations, okay, and how the workplace is changing. And really how we're going to this 9-to-5 job, might have more freedoms on our hands and eventually through this progressive era. And then obviously this is going to change our interactions with one another. And he talks about how this could cause dangers in society, how people might feel a little bit disconnected from their role in society because this is all happening at a rapid time, a rapid motion. Okay. So Naomi is just really how we are changing our society. It's being reflected, it's being understood, and we're really sharing a same conscious understanding of this change in society. Okay, and how this could be dangerous. And we'll talk about some of the elements he discusses and really how this really picks up for suicide around the world. All right, what about social integration? What do we have about social integration? What do we got? What do we got? Haley Weiss, what do you have for social integration?
The process during which newcomers or minorities are incorporated into the social structure of society.
All right, good, good. So what is an example of social integration, you think? What's a good example?
I guess after like some like
Okay, yeah. So more opportunities for African Americans. Okay, good, good. And really this change in society. You could say about immigration, how people are coming from all around the world to the United States, let's say just for the United States during the 1900s, after World War I, and applying their culture, their viewpoints, their perspectives to the United States. All right, good. So social integration is just how we're applying new methods. It could be anything, viewpoints, perspectives, even technology to our own, right? And kind of sharing that with society. All right, good. Any questions on those terms? All right, real quick, I wanted to finish up talking about the global perspective with you guys and move on to Durkheim's factors here. All right, so I thought this was interesting. This, oh, let me see if I can zoom in here. I didn't change it. I'm just trying to zoom in. There we go. So this is average birth numbers across the world. Yeah, it's 7. Do you believe that? But looking at this after this industrial revolution is occurring, I think this is something interesting to realize and figure out. It's like this is the average birth number around the world. Okay, at the end of, let's say, the 1920s, moving into the 1930s. So just analyze that, look at it real quick. What do we think? What do we think? What can we maybe, what answers can we maybe come up with the reason for the average birth rates maybe declining in some places around the world, or maybe being pretty high in other places? What do we think? What do we think? Raven, what do you got?
More industrialized countries that have an easier time working have a lower birth rate because they don't need as much, because they're more advanced, like manpower skills. It's not as agrarian, so they don't need
The farm hands, right?
that.
Okay.
So they need less industrialized nations, or like most of the countries in Africa, some of nations in the Middle East and South America, which are still less developed and less industrialized, still have the high birth rates. They also have like high death rates and still need
Yeah, with the lack of sciences and medical benefits and help, right? Okay, good, good. Yeah, that's exactly what we're looking at here. So with the Industrial Revolution, this occurred and birth rates went down. And the reason for it is because more people are getting involved in society and in jobs, in career paths. And like Raven said, we're shifting from this agricultural society where we don't need as many hands, literally, right? Where we don't need as many people to help on the farm. And this is kind of looking into our into our lives and realizing, you know what, maybe we don't have the time to take care of the children as we once did before in our society because we're working a 9 to 5 job. We're part of different extracurricular activities, right? And leisure time activities that involve our time and that we like and enjoy. And we kind of maybe losing that aspect of family ties. And realizing and looking at it, Durkheim describes maybe we're losing some religious tendencies as well. That close family ties that we once had as a society through this industrial age, we might be losing a little bit. And there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that. And in many of these underdeveloped societies and countries and places around the world, you'll see a higher birth rates. And the reason for it is because they didn't go through that innovation and advancement. And like Raven was saying too, with medical technology and innovations, the death rates are a little bit higher in these underdeveloped countries. All right, good. So I want to show that map and explain that a little bit. I thought that was interesting. And how this was something that through the early 1900s, this is shifting to the point it's even affecting our birth rates. All right, so slide. All right, so the sociological perspective, seeing the general in the particular. What does that mean? Seeing the general in the particular. The general in the particular. What do you think? So sociologists identify general social patterns in the behavior of particular individuals. What do you think that means? Should give some time for you guys to think about it. Brittany, what do you think? Okay. All right. So let's just say we're looking at one individual. What can we maybe find within that individual? What do you think? Raven, what do you think?
I think it's like, as it says, general patterns, shape, like how you act and think and speak.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can kind of just think like, even around here, you can see kind of a general average person.
Yeah.
You kind of formulate one, even amongst like the student body itself, just kind of like see what patterns line up with what the general shape.
Good work. Yeah. So when you're looking at an individual, let's just say here, go ahead, Katie. Awesome. Good job. Good job. So do you ever hear that stigma? It's like, oh, that person's from New Jersey. I think everybody like applies that. He's a New Jersey driver, just the way he's flying around on the road. There's a certain stigma to that, right? There's certain characteristics, values, beliefs, norms that we present that kind of represents ourselves to a form of society, a form of community, right? And when we're looking at, let's say, one community, there might be trends, there might be the way we talk, the way we express ourselves, the forms of entertainment that we enjoy, that might be different from, let's say, just down the road here, right? Or let's say into an urban area. Our way of life is totally different. We go down to Harrisburg, sometimes we see the cars flying on the street. It's just a total shift. It's a total change. And their way of life is totally different than ours. And that's what they mean by seeing the particular, right? Seeing the general and the particular, seeing one individual and realizing, you know what? They share a lot of trends. They share a lot of values and beliefs of many people in their own society, in their own community. Natalie, you have something else? Somewhat, yeah, somewhat. That's a good example of it too. Good. And then seeing the strange and the familiar. What does that mean? The strange and the familiar. Katie, you kind of explained a little bit about this. Even though we kind of fit a community, we fit societal standards of our current community, we might see a little bit of differences, right? And where do you think those differences come from? Okay, yeah. Good. Allison, go ahead. Yeah, exactly. Good job. So again, how society shapes us. And this is really how sociology came about. It's like, you know what? We can't just analyze on our reactions to certain our behaviors to certain stimulus. We got to look a little bit more about how society shapes us, how culture shapes us, right? How we react, how we represent ourselves. Okay, it's more on the culture, it's more on the nourishment, it's more on the experience. Okay, I'm sure we all have an example where we can all think back to someone saying, hey, you remind me of your brother, your sister, your parents, the way you talk, the way you act, even the way you walk, right? I know I get that a lot. But seeing the strange and the familiar is kind of looking at someone, an individual in one community, and realizing, you know what, they stick out. It's almost like they're trying to have a counterculture. What does counterculture mean? What do you think? Or even what do you think counterculture is?
Just developing in a way to go against societal norms and what is perceived as, you know, just normal and what is allowed.
Yeah, good job. And what example do you think you maybe come up with counterculture?
Well, when I hear counterculture, I always think of like the '70s hippie movement.
Good.
George Carlin.
Good. Yeah. The way people dress, the way they represent themselves, their viewpoints, their perspectives. It's challenging societal's whole standard of what we are as, let's say, Americans, right? And with this hippie culture, challenging our involvement in the Vietnam War. You're supposed to be dedicated to your country, honorable to your country. You're not supposed to challenge them or maybe have a viewpoint that is, let's say, kicking it back against the norm. Well, counterculture era, good job, the hippies. That's a great example of them challenging the government, challenging the ways of life that we all know. All right, I'll talk about Durkheim more tomorrow. I
No assignment.
was going to give you tomorrow to work on it, so that's why I was going to put it out. And then Friday, have you guys present it. It's pretty easy, I promise. Here it is. Since we're talking about sociology, the sociological perspective,
I was gonna bring it up anyway.
I had to get it. I had to talk about it anyway. Oh yeah, I was going to forget. Hold on one second.
Buddy present. Buddy present.
Buddy project now. This is supposed to be about you. So who are you? I have an example for you. I can show you tomorrow.
Let's not do this.
No, we are. Since we were talking about the familiar and these patterns, these social patterns, social integration, I think it's important to hear a little bit about yourself. So what influences you? So I'm looking for characteristics, I'm looking for trends, I'm looking for, let's say, attire that influences you. Maybe it's sports, maybe it's music, maybe it's, I don't know, forms of entertainment. But I want you guys to maybe create a collage of pictures, and I want you to depict them, explain them, how they represent yourself. You can do this on a Google slide. You can do this on, let's say, PowerPoint, Prezi. I know last year students used Cami. I don't know. Canva, yeah, Canva. Yeah, there you go. Canva. It's like a poster, I guess. I don't know. Canva. There you go. So Canva, you can use Canva if you want. I know some students use that last semester. It was a good way to kind of show who they are. So that's what I'm looking for. Friday, we'll have these presentations. And tomorrow, I'll give you some time to work on it. Does that work? Perfect. What's up, Haley? Yes, I'm going to pull it up right now.
Yeah, just put all of Aussie. I'm gonna put my dog that is different moods.